Hi, I'm Courtland with Healthio360, and I'm sitting here with Phil Southerland. And to give you a little background on Phil, in 2005 he established Team Type 1. 2011 founded Diabetes Sports Research Institute. There's a little bit of theme here. He is a board member of the Type 1 Diabetes charity JDRF, and in 2012 partnered with Novo Nordisk to found Team Novo Nordisk, which is a stellar team of global athletes who are all living with diabetes, and Phil is one of those people. Phil, thank you so much for joining us.
Courtland, great to be here. Thank you.
Yes. So you have a very interesting story. You were diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at a very young age. Can you share with us what your first recollection of what that really meant for you?
So I was diagnosed with diabetes at 7 months of age, it's really the only way of life I've ever known. At that time, it was a different age for the disease back then. There was no blood glucose testing. It was human insulin that worked when it wanted to work, not at any predictable time. And the doctors told my mom at diagnosis that your son's gonna, may live to 25, but your son will most likely be dead by 25, but if he is alive, he'll have renal failure or be blind.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah.
And that was our family's beginning of the journey. I was fortunate that my mom was motivated to keep her son alive and did a lot of research on diabetes, and they checked their blood sugar a lot to figure out what normal was, and then put me on a pretty strict regimen to try and keep my blood glucose similar to their blood glucose without diabetes. Mm-hmm. And my first recollection though, 4 years old I refused a shot. My dad took a belt to me. 6 years old I refused a shot, and my mom said, fine, you'll go blind. And that was kind of when I realized that diabetes was mine to control. And I took over at 6, and then it's been mine for 29 years now. I've had guardrails, i.e. Mother, friends, wives who have been there for me at times of need, but it's something I very much enjoy because it's the one thing in life that I actually do have control of most of the time.
Right. So this became a very real thing for you at a very young age. Having such a grim outlook imposed on you by your doctors, your healthcare team. How did your parents talk to you about this in a way that kind of made you take it seriously, but also didn't scare you half to death?
I think one of the big things my parents did is they treated me as if I was normal. Mm-hmm. Except I had to check my blood sugar in the morning. I had to get a shot. I had to give a shot when I came home from school, and I checked my blood sugar then. And then another shot before dinner time, and sometimes one other, give or take. It was very simple back then because you gave insulin at the same time every day, you ate at the same time every day, and they pushed me out into the world and said, if our kid can't go be a kid, then what's the point of living? And I'm very grateful they took that approach because I see and I understand. I'm a father of 2 boys now, and I understand that you want to shelter, you want to protect, but if you're not living, then what's really the point of taking control?
Right.
So I'd say they treated me like I was normal. Mm-hmm. And I was never allowed to use diabetes as an excuse. I just had to manage it. Mm-hmm. And sport for me was a very purposeful meaning to manage diabetes because when you're well controlled, then you are normal. It's just when your glucose is too high or too low that diabetes holds you back. And it kind of ingrained a discipline in me at a very young age that I think was one of the key pillars of my life. The discipline it takes to manage diabetes, it's hard. I've got a very positive attitude about the disease. It's been very good to me. It's given me purpose in life, but for a lot of people, it's depressing, it's lonely. No one else understands what you're going through. It's time that we give purpose to people, realize what's possible, and that's why I love my job so much.
Mm-hmm. That's great, and I think it's wonderful that your parents took that bent of just treating you like every other kid out there. Unfortunately, I remember being in grade school and there was a young girl in our class who had type 1 diabetes, and the whole thing was, oh, you can't give her any sugar. So when we brought in birthday treats, you had to give her a cupcake with no frosting or
Yeah.
something. And that seems, now that I'm so much more educated about the condition, from knowing people who have type 1 diabetes and are much more vocal about it, I look back on that and I feel so terrible about it. But was there anything, that you couldn't do? Like, were sleepovers not really a thing in your life because, you had to make sure everything was happening at the same time every day?
No, it's, again, I think I was blessed.
Mm-hmm.
And I did everything that I wanted to do. I did probably more than I should have done at times. And I spent Christmas in the hospital when I was 9 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I got the flu, I got sick, I was in ketoacidosis, which the flu is very challenging when you have diabetes.
Mm-hmm.
You're throwing up, so you can't give insulin, but you need insulin. And back then the insulins weren't stable, so they peaked. And it just became dangerous. And the only solution was go to the hospital and get this enormous IV shoved in your arm, which that was the only thing I was afraid of as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Typically once per year that happened. I'd bite through my mom's finger when they were injecting the IV.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the bad time. My parents, my mom, my father left when I was 6, so she raised me as a single mother, worked 3 jobs to put food over our heads, make sure we'd go to sporting events, and she always was at the sporting events. But she wrote a little manual, a Bible on diabetes, and really if Phil's acting any dumber than he normally does, do this first, and then check his blood sugar. Give him food, then check. Mm-hmm. And all my friends' parents had that. My teachers got that, all unbeknownst to me. And we had a good support network around people who were willing to support if needed. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, the responsibility was placed upon me, and I took it because I didn't want help from others. Right? And I remember the different birthday cakes and all the things you could not do. And for so many years, for 90 years, diabetes was a disease of what you cannot do. Mm-hmm. You can't do this, you can't play this. That list went on. And what's exciting now is that diabetes is really a disease of what you can do, so long as you take the appropriate steps with control.
Right. And so you are, I think, at an interesting age where you grew up from some of your life not having the internet. And, now with the internet, you can't stop it. It's everywhere. How did you and your family educate yourselves about diabetes without having access to the internet?
Back in the day, there were these things called libraries.
Oh my God.
And my mother actually went to the library and just read everything there was on diabetes. I believe she wrote letters to all the top research institutes, just asking, what to do. And she got letters back. Fortunately, that first doctor's diagnosis and projection were wrong. We know that now, knock on wood. But other doctors became assuring to her that if you take control, if you live a good life, if you eat healthy, exercise, give your insulin, then you should be able to live a full and normal life. And that was reassuring to her. I think it was tough. I remember she told me how she was breaking down, crying, and I think one of her friends said, "Joanna, just shut up, deal with it. You can't be a wreck because your kid needs to be solid." And really and that's probably one of the greatest things for the support network around is that the family has to embrace you as a person. The family has to believe you can do anything, and in doing so will enable and empower you to do what you want to do. Right. And I've never said no to anything because of diabetes. I made a lot of adjustments to say yes. I've given, I think, 165,000 times I've checked my blood sugar in 35 years, something like 70,000, 80,000 injections over the time. But I've lived a good life. And sport and exercise has always been a part of it. And moderation. Mm-hmm. I love ice cream. I love candy bars and all the junk food that everyone loves because it tastes so good. Mm-hmm. But you just got to be smart. If you live healthy to be healthy, then diabetes is not so difficult.
Right. So you took control of your diabetes at such a young age. You said 6 years old. When you were in high school and college, I understand that sports were a huge part of your management of diabetes. Can you share with us a little bit about that, and also how you talked with your teammates, your friends, your relationships about what it's like to live with diabetes, so they could kind of understand a little bit as well?
Yeah, my thing in college, in high school, it was the kids I'd grown up with, so my core group of friends. I remember one kid trying to make fun of me for drinking Diet Coke. And I said, look, if I drink Coke, I'll die. So shut up. And he didn't mention anything to me again. I stood strong for what I needed to do to take care of myself. When I went to college, I thought I was, I just had to tell friends, I said, if I act any dumber than I normally act, give me sugar and then make me check my blood sugar. I always carry my supplies with me, so they were there. I just told my friends, give me sugar and then make me check. And it happened once in all of college that my roommate had to help me, and that was it. He knew what to do and did it. Relationships, I was never ashamed of diabetes, but I wasn't necessarily as forthcoming with it as I am today. If people saw me doing a shot and they asked, of course I'd talk about it, but it wasn't, this is my life, this is what I do, this is my purpose in the world. So I'd tell people, relationships you got to talk about, and you really have to educate your partner, because at some point you're going to need their help. My wife has saved my life in the middle of the night. I've had others do the same, and it's part of the game. And you really, we have the tools to be self-reliant, but it's always good to have someone who loves you and vice versa, that's there just in case. And communication is important. But up until I think 21 years old, I really didn't talk openly. I was given an injection after a race I'd just won, and this guy looked at me and said, I've been racing with this person for 4 years against him. And he said, Phil, I'm just so disappointed. I said, excuse me? He goes, I'm so disappointed. We're in college, you're racing, the fact that you're doing drugs. I said, I'm not doing drugs. I said, I'm giving insulin, I'm a diabetic. He said, really? And I've been beating this guy. He was one of my arch nemesis in cycling terms. And he never knew. And that was the way it was for a lot of people with diabetes and anything, is that they hit it, they just managed and lived sheltered lives. And we've got riders on our team who used to go in the porta potty to check blood sugar and give insulin so that others didn't see their weakness. And that was fair for a lot of time. But now, diabetes is our strength.
Right.
And that's the cool thing.
So you have this quote, exercise is the $1 billion drug for the management of diabetes that doesn't get prescribed enough. Can you tell us about this a little bit?
Well, I think exercise is the $1 billion drug for everybody that never gets prescribed. And I've had great control of my diabetes the whole life. I've got two consistencies, really. I've always had insulin. I've always been somewhat physically active. Sometimes more, sometimes less. But myself and now all my team and all my athletes, we have the numbers that show that when you're exercising, you need less insulin. So the non-diabetic is going to, if they're exercising, their body's going to produce less insulin, delay the onset of prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. It's good for the head. It's good for the metabolism, and it just makes the body work better. And so many people, myself included sometimes, get caught up in life and the rush to do what's next and to go somewhere and answer an email, and you forget that if you don't invest in yourself, then you're going to go down. Diabetes or not, exercise is a means of investing in yourself. And 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week is not too much to ask, so that you can see your grandkids go to school for the first day, or do what you want to do when you're 70 years old or 80 or 90 or whatnot. So it's just, I look at exercise as a person's own investment in themselves. And physicians, U.S. especially, it's your blood pressure's too high, here, take a pill. Take a pill, take this, take that. For those who are in need of the drugs, I think it's great. my life is here because of the pharmaceutical industry. My career is here because of the pharmaceutical industry. But a lot of times, simple decisions, cutting out some salt, eating less sweets, exercising, can solve a lot of problems that pills are only a Band-Aid for.
Right. So speaking of the pharmaceutical industry, in 2012 you partnered with Novo Nordisk to found Team Novo Nordisk. Can you tell us what the inspiration was behind this and what the mission is of it?
Yeah. So as Team Type 1, we were racing all around the world. I was in China and I saw Novo Nordisk posters. And in Africa I saw the work Novo Nordisk was doing in the changing diabetes in children, where they provide, I think, 17,000 kids in 9 countries all the insulin and test strips needed to live. These kids would be dead otherwise. And they're a diabetes company. And I had the goal to get to the Tour de France. They were launching a new product. And I thought, A, this would be good for me, and B, we can promote this to the world. And so I had a conversation with a senior executive at Novo Nordisk. I made the pitch. I walked out of that lunch, and I knew the deal was done. But Jakob came back to me a week later with a very gracious email from the time we spent together, that he wanted to do a partnership if and only if we went back to our roots 2006 and 7 as an all-diabetic team. And at that time, there were 4 athletes with diabetes competing on a professional level. There was a development team where none of the kids had ever competed on a professional level. I'm sitting there thinking, is this possible, right? We didn't really have the athletes, and to be a second division team, like a AAA baseball team, you need to have 16 athletes. So I did what I do when I need to solve problems. I went on a bike ride. I said, you know what, Novo Nordisk they are a diabetes company. This feels like a genuine partnership. We have the chance to fly the changing diabetes flag around the world, and hopefully one day get to the tour. And so we did it. Took a chance. I said I could do it, and then my team went on a recruitment mission of everyone who had ever raced a bike with diabetes in the world, and tried to bring the best of the best into our program. The challenge that we saw early on was sustainability. And because athletes, their life cycle is not terribly long. Some can go on for years, but some it's in and out. And so we had to create a pipeline. So we really invested heavily in our development team. We launched a junior team, and then we started doing these talent ID camps. We bring kids from around the world in to try out for Team Novo Nordisk. And this is the cool, you see my guys racing in some of the biggest races in the world, but these camps, they're the best part of what we do. Because I remember 2013, I had 2 French kids, Quentin Bologna's, says, Phil, this is the first time in my life, in 10 years of diabetes, that I've been proud to have this disease. He goes, I'm grateful now that I have diabetes because it means my dream will come true. And I've seen him from a 16-year-old kid, and he's now racing against the best in the world every day. His dream is true because of diabetes. So we now have some really good kids coming through the program. This summer was 56 from 22 countries came and tried out. So we got a really robust development team, junior team, and those are the pipeline of my hero factory to get to the professional team. And the cool part, when you look at something I'm very proud of, is that 12 of the 18 on the pro team, when they were diagnosed, were told, you'll never race a bike again. 6 of the 18 on the development team were told, you'll never race a bike again. Not one of the kids on the junior team was told, you'll never race a bike again. So it's just our massive growth on social media, the public PR on the team all over the world that we get, and our presence at all the major diabetes congresses in the world. It's just a constant reminder to physicians that you can do whatever you want with diabetes, so long as you take control.
Right.
And they're now passing that information to patients as they're diagnosed, and looking at them as people who can versus people with diabetes who cannot. And I'm excited. I mean, it's been a fun journey so far. We've had bumps in the road, but still have that golden target of the Tour de France one day, so our message can get to the world.
Well, I'm sure you guys will get there. So athletes many times wear devices like Fitbit, Apple Watch, whatever you want to call them. And there's a lot of interesting technology coming out where they're thinking, they might be able to sense your blood sugar levels through some of these wearable devices. How do you feel that this may or may not empower people who are living with diabetes?
Well, in the world of data that we live in, I think it can only help. We did everything before without all this technology. But the improvements in the treatment, improvements in technology have made life easier. And for example, this year we created, in partnership with Microsoft, in their 1-week hackathon, created a dashboard so that our doctor in the car can look at all of our riders' racing's blood glucose at the same time. And having the knowledge, for our athletes, being able to look at a continuous glucose monitor and know that their blood sugar is going up and be able to inject insulin before it gets too high means they can be in control. And on the flip side, if they're seeing a trend going down, they eat food before they go low, then that keeps them in good control. And being in good control empowers you to achieve more. So I think giving people access to more information that's less invasive is going to just give people knowledge to see what does what to your body. What does a run do to you? What does pasta do? What is pizza? I mean, pizza is the arch nemesis of people with diabetes. No one can figure out pizza. That's 35 years of diabetes. I still can't figure out pizza. You're not alone. If you've done it, please let me know. But it's when I first got on a continuous glucose monitor trial in 2005, and in 3 days, I'd learned more about diabetes management than in 24 years prior. And making it easier for people to get this technology is going to help. So I'm excited about the future. There's a lot of companies working on machine learning and algorithm development to take the human decision process out. I'm testing one of those technologies now. It's been exciting. It's good. It's not perfect, but it's a vast improvement on what happened before. And this is just Gen 1. And so it's really cool to see the Apples, the Googles, the Microsofts of the world all taking a deep dive into diabetes. And because we've lived in such a in the sandbox world for so long that we've created all our own self-constraints and what's not possible. But it's this new, fresh perspective that's going to help to break everything down, which I think will fast track the next 10 years tremendously for people with diabetes. The challenge then comes, though. We've got great technology, great tools, but what about getting those to everybody? Getting them paid for, getting them to people in developing countries. And it's often forgot, a lot of the technology that's been created today, it's good for the top 5% of people in America. And that's something that has to be fixed. And if people do what's right for the person with diabetes, and I speak to the companies involved in disease or diabetes or any disease, do what's right for the patient, the companies will benefit. And so just trying to remind the pharmaceutical industry on a regular basis that do what's right for the patient. Do what's right for us, you will make your money.
And speaking of doing what's right for the patient, for the world in general, I mean, the CDC estimates that there's around 29 million Americans living with diabetes, and that's lumping type 1 and type 2 together, but these are some staggering numbers. What do you think is going on here, and who really needs to step up and take responsibility? Is it food industry, pharma industry, doctors, individual people themselves?
I think the internet needs to take responsibility because it's a time suck. And people get caught up on watching people exercise on Facebook and in turn don't go out and actually exercise themselves. But there's no one place you can point your finger and say it's your fault. It's a convergence of everything together that's creating this. And it's 29 million is a big number, but the really staggering number is the 89 million pre-diabetics in America. The kids that are getting type 2 diabetes these days. We have to prioritize exercise. Yeah, junk food in schools should not be allowed. I mean, sure, kids can have some cake here, this, that. There should be healthy food for kids to eat, healthy food for underprivileged, under-resourced families to eat, and exercise needs to be a priority. PE being taken out of grade school is a huge mistake, because that's 45 minutes of guaranteed physical activity for kids. That 45 minutes is enough to keep their body moving and help prevent diabetes. So looking forward, what can we do? Well, we can prioritize exercise. I said it's $1 billion, maybe it's the $1 trillion drug now that never gets prescribed. Now we can try to step away from the tablets and devices, right? Because if you don't, and back to you, at the end of the day, it's you as an individual are responsible for your health. No one else can be to blame for your decisions. And parents, I think, need to take more responsibility of living a healthy lifestyle themselves and imposing that on their children. Walk to the park, walk to the restaurants or shops, or get out and be active with your kids, and do that at a young age. And we'll see in 20 years if I've been successful as a parent, as what I'm preaching now to the parents out there. But it's not easy. I know that. There's so many distractions in life, and it's so easy to just get pulled into the devices or everything on the web. But outside is still beautiful. Right. People got to go out there and do it, because these numbers are huge. If you look at 120 million people with diabetes or pre-diabetes, so it's over a third of our population. Now we need to take responsibility collectively as a population. I think type 1 and type 2, from kind of advocacy standpoints, are two completely different worlds. We need to unite together. As a type 1 diabetic, I don't blame a person with type 2 diabetes. I think it's still up to us each day to take control. And type 2s, that I think a lot of times look at type 1s and say, well, you don't know what I'm going through. I have so much respect for the challenges that come with type 2, because there is a stigma around it. It's not talked about in a positive light for the individuals who have it, and we've got to stop that. We've got to start focusing on what's living healthier lives, empowering people. I think physicians need to really focus on exercise. I mention it at every diabetes congress I go to when they talk about the host of protocols and therapies they're using. What about exercise? Well, our patients won't exercise. That's the response they get every time. And to the doctors out there, if you don't believe your patients will exercise, then they won't. But if you believe that they can, that they will, then they will. And so we have to just start believing in ourselves, believing in others, and prioritizing health.
And if you really push the conversation with your patient about exercise, I think we have such little time with our doctors, and I think when your doctor says, well, if you exercise a few times a week, and the patient's like, I don't really have time, and the doctor usually leaves it there. But if they just keep pushing a little bit, needle a little bit more every conversation, your patients might start to get back into exercise, or exercise just that little bit more when they come see you again. So when we talk about empowering patients and helping them to manage their condition, diabetes, more, it always reminds me of this gentleman who came on our show, H360 Live. His name is Joe Tavano, and he had been living with diabetes, type 1 diabetes, for a very long time, and just was not taking management seriously enough, to the point where he had lost both of his legs to diabetes. And when he came on our show, he looked right in the camera and said, you think you know better? You think you're bigger than this disease? You don't. You have to take it seriously. You have to manage your blood sugars. You have to exercise. You have to eat right. I learned the hard way, but his message, I think, was very powerful. Do you have a take-home message for the viewers of this interview about empowerment, managing their diabetes, exercise, diet, if you wanted to look right in the camera and really drive that message home?
Yeah, diabetes only chooses the champions, right? And so you've been chosen, you've got it, You're part of the team. Now, choose what you want to be the champion of. And that could be to be a professional cyclist for Team Novo Nordisk, inspire, educate, and empower people with diabetes around the world. Or that could be as a mother, a father, a scientist, a doctor, a grandparent. Whatever your dream is, you can do it. But taking care of yourself is a part of making that dream a reality. And in diabetes, you have the numbers. And just use them and take advantage of online, the diabetes online community. There's lots of resources out there. You're not alone. You're not alone. There's a huge team out there. And we, Team Novo Nordisk, when we race around the world, we don't do it just for the sake of racing bikes. We do it for our fans. We do it for people with diabetes who need the inspiration to know that they can do anything. Educate them on kind of the hows of getting it done, and empower them to get out the door and go achieve more. So it's a good time to have diabetes. It's a better time to be in good control of your diabetes.
Well, Phil, thank you so much for your time today, and we can't wait to see Team Novo Nordisk in the Tour de France.
Thank you so much. Welcome to the team.